Hello, Dr. Kit Slies here, psychologist and life coach, here to inspire your self-compassion, your confidence, and your growth. Today, I wanted to talk about working with your inner critic and the wrong way to go about doing that, which I see so many people doing, unfortunately, and I want to offer a different perspective. But let me start off with just talking about what is our inner critic. Our inner critic is a normal part of ourself. And as the name implies, it's a part with it's an inner part of ourself that criticizes, usually ourself, right? So your inner critic comes out in self-talk that you have with yourself. They may sound like, hey, are you sure you want to do that? Or hey, do you want to take a second look at this thing you did? I'm not so sure that was a good idea, or you did the best job at that. Um, and so in a normal functioning inner critic, these are good things, because the reality is that we do all make mistakes, right? That's normal, that's okay, that's healthy. And when we have an inner critic who can point that out for us and help us be aware of when we need to double check our work or go back and do something that we know we can do better, that's a good thing, right? The problem that can happen is that sometimes our inner critics become dysfunctional. They go into overdrive. This can come out in so many ways. A lot of times it comes out in self-doubt or shame, where our inner critic is really mean and nasty with us. And they're not just calling out normal mistakes or things that might require our attention in order to grow and improve, but they're calling out, um, maybe some negative beliefs, some negative, untrue beliefs that we have about ourselves, and being critical of who we are as a person. Oh, you're so an example of that might be like, oh, you're yeah, you did this thing wrong, and you're so horrible. I can't believe you. That's a dysfunctional inner critic. An inner critic might also build on any shame or self-doubt, and it might look like perfectionism, where our inner critic is the primary voice that we hear in our inner dialogue with ourselves. And that is not normal. That is not normal. An inner critic is just a part of ourself, okay? And so a lot of times, understandably, when people are working with a dysfunctional inner critic, I think that's a key word here, is that an inner critic that requires work is one that's in dysfunction. Not all inner critics are bad or require work. But so when you hear about inner critic work that is maybe can be counterproductive or unhelpful, it's inner critic work that involves shutting down the inner critic, or telling it to stop or get out, or sort of naming it and giving it a personality that is like an undesirable personality. And the problem with these approaches is that your inner critic is a part of you. Remember, in a normal functioning person, it's normal for us to have this critiquing part of ourself, and it's a normal a person who's having healthy emotional functioning is able to receive healthy criticism or healthy critiques. So these approaches where you're shutting down your inner critic, or shutting it up, or casting it as like a bad character, what that does is it's teaching us to be mean to ourselves, to this part of ourselves. And it's normalizing also just casting people in a bad light, not just ourselves, but it's just making it okay to like gossip about people and oh, look how bad they are and everything like that. And the reason why this is can be counterproductive or unhealthy is because our brains are sponges. They learn to internalize the things that we do repeatedly. There is a phrase in mental health and psychology that neurons that fire together wire together. So, in other words, if you're having a repeated behavior or a repeated thought or a repeated way of doing something, your brain, those neurons fire together and they eventually wire together so that that habit or thought or way of doing things becomes a habit. So if you're making a habit out of shutting down this part of yourself or again, casting it as a bad character, you're teaching your brain not to just do that to a part of yourself, but to do that to other people as well. And so what I would propose to you that a more productive way of working with your inner critic is a more compassionate approach. I'll say it again, self-compassion, folks. It really is the key to so many things. And so by taking this compassionate approach, not only are we cultivating compassion towards ourselves and other people, but we're also able to leverage the strengths of our inner critic. And how do we do that? If we are taking a compassionate approach with our inner critic, we are acknowledging that our inner critic can be a healthy part of us with a purpose. And we are asking to have a relationship with that part of ourselves where we are highlighting what the purpose is of the inner critic. Oh, hey, inner critic, you're here to help me do better. Great. I'm so open to that feedback right now. I'm in the mind space for that. And that's actually what I'm wanting to do. I want to hey, I'm working on my resume and I need a critical eye right now, right? So I need you here right now. Or if you've got a good relationship with your inner critic and they're coming out when you don't need them, you can just say, hey, inner critic, you know what? I know you mean well right now, but I actually, we're not in a critical mode right now. We're in relaxation mode. There is nothing that we need to work on. We're doing better. We're just hanging out with the fam and having a relaxing afternoon. Inner critic, can you also relax or maybe work on something else? I was worrying about this morning, something that I was working on that actually does need some work. I'm not thinking about it right now, inner critic, but why don't you go off in the background and work on it? Right. And I will say that this approach has worked wonders for me in my own work. And it's actually come out for me in dream work that I've done, really kind of unknowingly. What I sort of found from doing dream work is that my inner critic really came out in dreams when I was really stressed. Folks, I used to have very, very, very perfectionistic tendencies. And I probably still do to some degree, but not to the degree that I used to. And my inner critic was a primary voice in my inner dialogue. And when I was feeling the pressure of like schoolwork and work and just life demands and feeling like I had to do it all perfectly and feeling really stressed out, through my own work in therapy, I noticed and had some outside help also to help me notice that my inner critic was actually coming up as a character in my dreams. It was a male character, and the way that he would come up in my dreams is that he was trying to hurt me. He initially in these dreams, they were almost like nightmares where I would be getting chased or attacked in some way by this character. And in the dream, I felt very helpless. And that's how I felt in real life too, right? I mean, that is a helpless feeling when your inner dialogue is this constant negativity of you just need to do better and you could never do good enough. Yeah, you're going to feel helpless and overwhelmed, right? And so, but once I identified in my dreams that this character represented to me my my inner critic, I was able to then begin to establish a relationship with him. My inner critic is tends to be more male gendered for me. He's very not to just as far as like an energetic energy I'm talking about here. I'm not trying to gender an inner critic or whatnot, but just for me, he has more of a masculine energy because my inner critic can get stuff done when he when he wants to, right? And so um, once I realized that my inner critic was coming out in these times of high stress, because really he's trying to help in some ways too. Now my inner critic was dysfunctional, so he wasn't helping, but I was able to begin to start using him in a more productive way when I was feeling overwhelmed, but without the negativity. So when I began to have this dialogue with him, my dreams began to evolve. So initially, he was still a very scary character in my dreams and still even attacking me. Um, and I actually spent several years in that space where my inner critic would come out when I was stressed and overwhelmed and reverting to perfectionistic tendencies. But in the dream, even though I felt very scared, I also began to feel like I could effortlessly fend him off. And I actually didn't, would get to that point where I actually didn't feel scared of him, even though he was scary. I knew that I could fend him off and that he could sort of be present in this dream and I could do other stuff that was happening in the dream with him there. And I spent a long time in that space. And what that translated to in my life is that I became more aware of the inner critic dialogue in my head and realizing the positive aspects of that and shifting to a more self-compassionate dialogue in my waking hours. In more recent months, what I've noticed from this work is that the character, my inner critic character in my dreams, has actually evolved to be an ally. And he's come with me on several harrowing journeys. And I could go into other themes that come up in my dreams and whatnot. But all this to say, I tell you about my dream here to highlight that you can build a relationship with your inner critic that translates in your life. And it doesn't have to be through dream work, it can be through your waking hours. But the idea here is to build that relationship with your inner critic, acknowledging your inner critic as a part of yourself, how to have compassion with yourself and your inner critic, and use the inner critic to leverage your strengths and to be open to, oh yeah, is there something that I want to be working on and improving right now? If so, great, let's call that inner critic out. And if not, let's ask the inner critic to take a break. So I hope that you can use this perspective. Maybe you're already done inner critic work and aren't so nice to your inner critic, or maybe inner critic is new to you. But either way, I hope that you can use this perspective to do some inner critic work that is capitalizing on self-compassion and compassion for your inner critic. That's all for now, and I'll see you next time. Bye.